Hello and welcome to the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. My name's Thomas Williams. The last song, dream big. You think big. It's not impossible. It's I'm possible. If you make the sky your limit, you will only reach the sky. Stretch your own imagination and manifest bigger. And that will be a theme for tonight's show. And there's going to be not many Q&A. We haven't got the time. We've got a lot to cover. There's a lot of intel. Some of it rather interesting. Some of it rather disturbing. And a lot of pondering pieces to go through. And we're going to cover a fair bit tonight. There'll be some questions that I will pull out in the first hour to address certain things, but the general Q&A section will not be done in tonight's show. Right, let's get into the details. And the live link for the show is Spreaker.com/user/8955881. You can also listen live at thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. And there's a raft of archives there, including the must-listen-to shows, which I think will be helpful to all new members. It gives you the gist of what THI is all about. And there's also a lot of portions of transcripts from the show on key topics. You want to know what really is all the RV is all about, and a few other things that are in there, and self-help and empowerment pieces as well, including the shielding document, which I will reference later on. Where are we next? We have the Facebook page, Truth, Honour and Integrity, and the Facebook alternative, and that's MeWe.com. And if you can't find us, that's also Truth, Honour and Integrity. If you can't find us, send an email, which is also the email for comments, suggestions or questions for the show, and that's truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. We have the People's Club Foundation website, and that's at thepeoplesclub.org. And also my Patreon, and thank you all once again for contributing. And that's at patreon.com/TommyW/memberships. First piece I need to cover before we get into a little bit of news and a couple of Q&A before the top of the hour. I want to thank the members for their efforts every day, and more so this week, and also to the member who gave the large donation to my Patreon this week. I thank you for that. I'm humbled by your generosity, trust me. And to the members who made a stringent effort to get the information about THI and also about Kim and the Trust to a wider audience, I want to thank you all. Now, over the course of alt media, there have been several money-oriented platforms put forward. We've all seen them. And we all had an interest in some of them as a potential possibility of improving our own lives initially. And thankfully, our members have largely moved on from that thinking level of not I and my, but we and us. But these internet-based money programs have been everywhere, be it NESARA, GESARA, the San Germain Trust, Jim Willie, Cliff High, Bix Weir, and others of Buy Gold and Silver, as they are going to skyrocket, the Sestwi KV Trust and the Birth Certificate Fund, OPPT, the RV, DNARS, ZIMS, and the currency revaluation with Tony, Tank, James Gilliland, Dave Smith and Winston Strout and several others. We also had Neil Keenan and the Classroom accounts, which also involved Anna von Reitz, Karen Hudes and the World Bank, and yes, she is still working for the World Bank despite her denials. And we also had OITC with Mr. Crayford and Ray Dam. VK Durham claims they owned this and that trust. And then we had the cryptocurrencies and blockchain plastered all over the internet. And it's quite a list. And I'm sure there are others that I've forgotten due to the sheer volume of them. Now comes the kicker. In 2016, another one came along. Now take out the personal attachments of this show, and Kim and I in particular, and look at it for what it is. A new money programme that came along speaking about the Manor World Holding Trust, promising funds for the countries and also the people. And evidence was provided in quite a bit of detail, and people demanded more proof, which is fine. More proof was provided, and then even a former RV stalwart jumped on board. Tank. Based purely on the evidence provided both by word and also by actions. Now, the Trust has delivered funds to some countries, including America, otherwise we would be bankrupt now. Think of the last 3 budgets. But not to the people from and no funds have been delivered from an outside point of view. And that could possibly be used in an argument against the Trust and its validity. Another promise not fulfilled, they may say. And yet the intel last week with regards to what happened in the Treasury and some others have shown the exact reasons why the people haven't started receiving the funds. So that's the background story of this piece. So here we are now in 2018, having had the alternative media bombard us with money-based schemes, all of which just put out some information, all of which promised tomorrow, the next day, or 2 weeks, and many of them now proven to be frauds at worst or misled at best. But the one thing all the programmes above have in common is all of them at various stages, and some still continue, to have their narratives and their programmes and the people that cover them all plastered all over the alternative media. Particularly during the time period 2010-2014. For those that can remember that far back, it took up almost all of the alt media, did it not? Now, from a public point of view, it could be seen as a positive change via these people striving to get this fund or this trust. But from an overview, is it not seen as a distraction? Who are the masters of distraction? Yes, the cabal and their agency minions. Now, the question you all have to answer is why, having plastered all over the internet for so long all of the above people and their programs, has one group and one money program not only been left out of the internet, but avoided at all costs? Yes, I've heard the stories of alt media people being paid to not put certain people on the internet, and it doesn't surprise me in the least. I see it as another desperation act, personally. So why hasn't THI and the Trust been used as another distraction on the internet, as has been actively blocked, as many of the members find out themselves this week and other weeks? Although, to give credit where credit is due, one particular guy in Cosmic Voice this week did post it in Cosmic Voice this week, along with his special brand of rhetoric against me. But that matters not to me, so kudos for them for opening their mind a bit. But could it be the Trust and THI is actually not a distraction, but something very real and a threat to their system. The discrepancies are far and wide. Mass over-promotion of money programs and then ignore one in particular that comes forward. It doesn't make much sense. Well, the question for new listeners is why? Why have they used all of the above people in distraction programs and ignored this one? I'm not here to provide that answer for you. You need to make that decision for yourself. And once you do, you will understand things in a much better way, I suspect. Now, one of the questions that has been asked today in the Q&A section, and I do have them all, and maybe I'll do an extra show and go through the Q&A again, is why is it that they do not want you or the trust to get any credit for anything that you guys have done up to this point? That was one of the questions sent in this week. Perhaps, and this is where your pondering comes in, it won't be the first tonight. Well, it is the first, but it won't be the last. Perhaps a comment left by email from one of our listeners described it best, and it went as follows. You are not invited onto other shows, as I think you are invisible to most. I go through the same thing. It's your frequency is just too high, in my opinion. What you are doing is extraordinary and on such a high frequency and vibration that others cannot connect. So it makes you, in essence, invisible. Now, the thing to ponder on with that statement is it's in alignment with the two worlds theory I released to THI listeners back in the fall of 2016. What if we really are invisible? Makes you think. That's why, again, for the benefit of the new people, new listeners, I call mainstream media portal people, because they're operating from a different world to we do. Their news makes no sense. It's not from our world. And our news makes no sense to them either, because they're not in our world. Two planets operating on two frequencies side by side is the two worlds theory. The plan was to overlay their world onto ours. That won't be happening. My own theory is their world will disappear. And it is a theory, because we are operating on a different frequency. In essence, it's a transition. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to a 5D planet. The planet changes itself within the frequency range of certain inhabitants. I think for those of you who want to go into the full story of the two worlds, I think it was a show back in September or October of 2016, and it is documented in the transcripts, I think, on the Patreon site. Right, let's get into the news. So that's your first ponderings to begin with tonight. There will be more. WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been charged under seal, protectors inadvertently revealed in a recently unsealed court filing. Now, it's a development that could significantly advance the probe into so-called Russian interference in the 2016 election, and according to this Portal People News, have major implications for those who publish government secrets. Now, the disclosure came in a filing in a case unrelated to Assange, and Assistant US Attorney Kellen Dyer urging a judge to keep the matter sealed, wrote, "Due to the sophistication of the defendant and the publicity surrounding the case, no other procedure is likely to keep confidential the fact that Assange has been charged." Now, later, Dwyer wrote the charges would need to remain sealed until Assange is arrested. And Dyer is also assigned to the WikiLeaks case, and people familiar with the matter said that Dyer was disclosing the true but unintentional truth. Now, Joshua Stueve, a spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Eastern District of Virginia, I've highlighted that for a reason. The court filing, they said, was made in error, and that it was not the intended name for this filing. An FBI spokesman declined to comment. Now, federal prosecutors in the Eastern District of Virginia have long been investigating Assange, and in the Trump administration had begun taking a second look at whether to charge members of the WikiLeaks organization for the 2010 leak of diplomatic cables and military documents which the anti-secrecy group published. Investigators have also explored whether WikiLeaks could face criminal liability for the more recent revelation of sensitive CIA cyber tools. Now this, for those of you with short memory, was forecasted in a show, was it 2 or 3 months ago? Well, this is now gaining traction. But as I said then, and I will repeat now, this could well work in our favour. Ignore the mainstream media rhetoric. This could well work in our favour. Next, the Department of Veteran Affairs, and more shenanigans going on there, and a guy by the name of Mr. Gorman, and he's claimed that the Department of Veteran Affairs has thrown his fall semester into chaos by underpaying him without notice or explanation, making him one veteran among potentially tens of thousands on the GI Bill who have watched their bank accounts dwindle because of the agency's ongoing alleged technical failures. The guy went on, he said he can't afford rent, can't afford groceries. It's a lot of emotional strain and aggravation. Mr. Gorman, who is an Iraq war veteran, said, "I'm supposed to graduate in May of 2017, but I don't know if that's feasible if this underpaying persists." Now, the background to this is problems began this summer when the VA's benefit processing system buckled under complex new formulas for the GI Bill students. Yeah, right. As a result, scores of veterans waited weeks or months to be paid and have fallen victim to the agency's decade-old technology that advocates and lawmakers have warned for several months would do precisely what it did: fail. Now some veterans are struggling to overcome financial straits after they took out loans or put expenses on credit cards to cover the shortfall. And advocates are concerned veterans are taking on financial burdens on top of other challenges such as mental health and balancing school with family. And there is also a grave concern that the Veterans Affairs won't have the problems straightened out ahead of the spring semester either. Many veterans still haven't received payment. Others, like Gorman, have been underpaid. He was set to receive $631 a month while studying full-time, and just $269 arrived on November the 1st. And given that he lives in New York and their cost of living being much higher, that's not going to go far, is it? And given that his course load and unpaid internship make it difficult to work even part-time. The House Veteran Affairs Committee is scheduled to grill VA officials over the problem today. I hope they resolve it quickly. A sign of concern, Jeff Bezos, Amazon. There was a full-on meeting last Thursday in Seattle, and an employee asked Bezos about Amazon's future, and the specific question wanted to know what lessons Bezos had learned from the recent bankruptcies of Sears and other big retailers. And Mr. Bezos' reply, I thought, was rather interesting. Amazon is not too big to fail. And in fact, he then went on, he said, I predict one day Amazon will fail. Amazon will go bankrupt. And if you look at large companies, he said, their lifespans tend to be 30 plus years, not 100 plus years. And the key to prolonging that demise is for the company to obsess over customers and avoid looking inward. Interesting comment, Mr. Bezos. Worrying about itself. If we start to focus on ourselves instead of focusing on our customers, that will be the beginning of the end. We have to try and delay that day for as long as possible. Interesting comments there, I must say. Further trouble in the top end fancy schools, which most of us can't afford to go to, and further claims of a sexual predatory nature, and this time it's Dartmouth College, and is facing a $70 million lawsuit from 6 women who claim the school had ignored 16 years of sexual harassment by 3 ex-professors, and they allege that the Ivy League school allowed the tenured psychology professors to harass, discriminate against and rape female students. Now, the federal lawsuit, which was filed last Thursday, names Dartmouth trustees as defendants, not the former professors, and the college denies the claims and said they will respond in court. Now, the spokesman said the lawsuit says the elite school turned a blind eye to bad behaviour by these professors for more than 16 years, having received many complaints about Professors Todd Heatherton, William Kelly and Paul Whelan. Now, the 6 named women and a 7th named as Jane Doe alleged the professors had clear bias towards hiring attractive young women to work in their labs and treated female students as sex objects. And the 3 predatory club professors held meetings in bars, invited students to hot tub parties, sent lewd photographs, groped and assaulted these women, and when students spurned their advances or refused to participate in their party culture, they were threatened with academic consequences, the lawsuit claims. It's just wrong. Just wrong. It's too much of it. Way too much of it. I'll have more on, I'll read this piece, but I will have a op-ed comment on this later. A judge in Washington, D.C. this week ordered the White House to return Clinton News Network reporter Jim Acosta's press pass after it was revoked by the Secret Service. Now, the judge orders says that the pass must be reinstated as a Clinton News Network lawsuit against Donald Trump continues. Mr. Acosta's press pass was taken after he clashed with the president during a news conference earlier this month, and the judge said the White House decision likely violated the journalist, that's a laugh, journalist, right to due process and freedom of speech. Speaking outside the court, Mr. Acosta praised the decision and told reporters, let's go back to work, whilst White House spokesman Sarah Sanders said they would comply with the order and would also further develop rules and processes to ensure fair and orderly press conferences in the future. There must be decorum in the White House, she added. Good luck with that, with the clowns in there. In the Intel section, again, I'm preaching to the choir with the older members because they've seen and heard it many times now, where I've put stuff out and it's come out later. But in the Intel section, I think it was on October the 19th show or the 25th, I stated that the killing of the Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi was done by the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, and there was an attempt by the rogue elements in the US military to make good of that and bribe Saudi Arabia for $2 trillion. But given they've only got $400 billion in assets, that's kind of impossible, and that went sideways. This week, in a news conference, the CIA has now concluded that the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the assassination of the journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul last month, which is contradicting the Saudi government's claims that he was not involved in the killing. This according to people familiar with the matter, and the CIA's assessment, in which officials said they have a high confidence, is the most definitive to date linking Mohammed to the operation, and also complicates the Trump's administration efforts to preserve its relationship with a close ally. They're not a close ally. That's a Bush close ally, not our close ally. Anyway, a team of 15 Saudi agents flew to Istanbul on a government aircraft in October and killed Khashoggi inside the Saudi consulate, where he had come to pick up documents that he needed for his planned marriage to a Turkish woman. And in reaching their conclusions, the CIA examined multiple sources of intelligence, including a phone call that the prince's brother, Khalid bin Salman, the Saudi ambassador to the United States, had with Khashoggi, according to the people familiar with the matter, who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss the intelligence. Khalid told Khashoggi, who was a contributing columnist to the Washington Post, that he should go to the Saudi consulate in Istanbul to receive the documents, and gave him assurances that it would be safe to do so. Except it wasn't. Are we for time? Okay. Given the fun and games on the border, or just south of the Southwest American border, crime figures came out in Mexico this week, and I think these figures are astonishing, but I also think they're massively underestimated. Some 37,000 people in Mexico are currently classed as missing by the government. 37,000. The vast majority are believed to be dead, victims of the country's spiraling violence that has claimed more than 250,000 lives, which is a gross underestimate, since 2006. The country's murder rate has more than doubled to 26 per 100,000 residents, which is 5 times the American figure. People in Europe will be surprised with that, because they think America is the murder capital of the world. But there you have it. Mexico murder official, I might add, murder tally is 5 times higher than America's. And the killing and the number of missing grow each year. Last year, 5,500 people just disappeared, which was up from 3,400 the previous year, and Mexico's murders are up another 18% through September of this year. Now, victims' families, mostly mothers, organise search parties, climbing down ravines or scouring trash dumps. And whilst their technique is rather crude, sometimes they hire labourers to hammer steel rods into the soil and haul them up to see if they can smell decomposition. Very sad, this. Other times they simply look for an exposed body part or a shallow grave. But the sheer numbers of the disappeared now rival more famous cases of missing people in Latin American history. California, Jill Cisneros has defeated the Republican Young Kim on Saturday in the last of Orange County's undecided House races following the recent midterm elections, which has given the Democrats a clean sweep of the state's 6 most fiercely fought congressional contests, marking a complete shift in a region long synonymous with political conservatism, whatever that means. And with that victory, Democrats will constitute the entirety of Orange County's 7-member congressional delegation, which is the first time that has happened since the 1930s. And the Republican Party have no GOP representative in California in the House. And what have they done with that? What are they doing in California, all these Democrats? And don't think for 1 minute I'm Republican, because I'm not. I'm not that stupid. Parties are part of the problem, in my opinion anyway. You're free to disagree, but you'll find once you really open your eyes, this party game is more divide and conquer. At least one person has died and 229 others have been injured, as around 282,000 people started protesting against soaring fuel prices throughout France. Those of you with long memories will tell you, I've told you in previous shows the history of the French people protesting. Well, it started again. Police used tear gas to stop demonstrators at the Champs-Élysées. Starting in the early hours of Saturday morning, tens of thousands of people took to the streets of French cities to express their discontent with the policies of President Emmanuel Macron and the French government's recent decision to raise fuel prices through additional taxes. Whether this country, France, I'll give you a little bit of intel and background. The IMF have been instructing certain countries to raise gas prices by $2, of which $1 goes to them. Whether France has been threatened with that as well, I'll get more details maybe for the next show. But that is what is going on. The IMF is broke, bankrupt, spent, and they've been threatening countries to increase gas prices, of which $1 of every gallon sold would go directly to the IMF. Anyway, the French people complained gasoline prices never stop rising, and this time it's the straw that broke the camel's back. Macron and his buddies just let things go from bad to worse. Yep. Final news before I go into covering some questions or comments from the emails, and then we'll go into a music break and the intel. Wage growth has been dismal for many American workers, despite the rhetoric from the portal people, and despite signs of a so-called strong economy. I'm sorry, it's just not strong. The federal poverty line in America is $25,100, except in Alaska and Hawaii, where it's $31,380 and $28,870 respectively. Now, to better understand what it means to be poor in each state, they have calculated the income it takes to be at the poverty level in each state based on buying power. And wage growth has been dismal for many American workers despite signs of a stronger economy. According to the United States Census Bureau, 12.3%, 1 in 8, of the US population is living in poverty, which means they're earning below $25,100. 1 in 8. And that's their figures. Maybe it's more 1 in 6 in our world, not theirs. Right, some Q&A. I'm going to read this out and then I'm going to go through it and then address some of it and pass comment on it. This is in relation to the piece, a couple of pieces I've done that has referenced black people, and this person said, you recently said that you thought black people brought or were the origin of dark magic into this world, but didn't say how or why. Obviously that wasn't a hit easy on the ear for me or any other black person listening, I should imagine. So I'd be grateful if you expand on that sometime and tell that story no holds barred. Well, my comment to that is I made it quite clear in the show. I do not know the origin of the dark magic. It's something I would like to find out, whether it's intrinsic in the black people's makeup, genetics, or whether it was introduced to the black people at a later date. I just don't know. I would like to find out that answer myself, because it has created a big problem on this planet. It's not a denigration of the black people. It is what it is. Like I said, I don't know the answer of whether they were seeded and brought here with that magic, or whether they were seeded after they came here. I was also covered in the From Russia with Love series. On your latest show, you talked about reparations for slavery, and during that talk, you, to my ears, seemed to imply the responsibility for slavery lay mostly with the Africans selling each other out. While I know there's truth in that, again, I'd be grateful if you could elaborate, because hopefully it's not that simple or cut and dry. Well, my response to that is what took place. That is what a lot of his story won't tell you. It was down to the African people to round up their own people, and they sold it to the ship owners. So we're talking reparations. That was your original source of the money and the funding. The African people rounded up their own people. Now, none of it is pleasant. But to turn around and say the slave owners, who are now all dead, including the people who suffered terribly by slavery, that people in the modern day should receive money for what their ancestors suffered, to me is wrong. But you cannot carry on. It's like the Jewish people, and I will reference it later. It's not an attack on the black people, and it's not an attack on the Jewish people either. But we have to set history right with the truth, not the lies. The lies continue to divide and conquer. And the African people have to address that their ancestors sold their own people. Otherwise, they just carry on blaming the whites. I'm not saying the whites were not good. I don't advocate for any slavery, no matter which colour you are. It took place, but you can't ignore a vital piece of history. The person goes on and says, clearly there's an anti-black agenda or programme that was uploaded into the Matrix long ago by the powers that be. I thought the reason was because melanin made one more resistant to mind control. They favour blue eyes and blonde and red hair, as you know, or because blacks were the original race. This is the problem, is that one group always feels that they were more victimised than others. The reality is we all were victimised. Doesn't matter what colour you were, what country you came from, what religion you are, what sexuality you are. It matters not. Now, you mentioned that they favour blue eyes and blonde hair. Please explain why they genocided the Rus people, why they genocided the Yugoslavian people 20 years ago, why they are trying to genocide Iran, which is known as the land, well, the etymology of Iran is land of the Aryans. Why have the Iranians got blue eyes? So, again, that is his story, not our story. You also mentioned they favour people with red hair. Well, there was a massacre of red-haired people in Peru. There was a massacre of mainly red-haired people in Ireland. And they've been doing hell and all to the red-haired people in the Basque region. Again, his story won't tell you this because they want you to focus on their story. And they want you to believe that one group of people always gets the shitty end of the stick. The person went on, perhaps this is wrong. No, there has been an element of paying off old karma. Has there been an element of paying off old karma from a different cycle as well? To be honest, that sits better than black people just drew a short straw in the game. I'm not asking these things so I can blow a fuse or have a pity party. I'm much more interested in healing and moving forward. It's just been quite frustrating and difficult internally trying to rationalise the experience of being in a culture where you're less than because of skin colour. Fair comment. Now, what all people, not just black or Jewish, have to learn to train your brain to think different. Not what you've been taught, either in history or in life. It's just follow the pattern. But most people jump into defensive mode of their own particular group and don't hear what is being said. People of California jumped on me last week because of a piece last week because they're from California, but they're not listening. People always jump into the defensive mode of their own particular group. We have to change that thinking pattern. Now, for example, if we asked in a survey of the alt media, which is the most popular skin colour of the cabal, I think most would say white mainly. But do you hear anyone saying it's unfair, this show and many others in the alternative media, that we're picking on the white race cabal? No, of course they don't, because that's overlooked. And this is the key aspect of life and society currently, which is heavily programmed into the victimhood mode to defend their own personal group, be it minority or other, and in some cases cults. We have to train our brain to think different, not jump to the defensive because Thomas said this about lesbians, or Thomas said this about gays, where all lesbians and gays jump in, or Thomas said this about feminism, which was largely, well, actually 100% approved, which is a bit surprise to me. But we have to stop doing that. And we all do it. Make no mistake, I'm no different. I've done it myself. But we have to learn to train our brain to think different. I hope that helps. I've bracketed 3 people's questions into one, and I'll do the same in the next lot, because there's a theme that runs through it. Would it be timely to discuss once again the peace treaty on an up-and-coming THI show? Second question, Kim talked about the peace treaty in 2016 for the planet. Can we find out more information on the treaty? What does it say? Who wrote it and who signed the treaty? And the third one, exactly what is the peace treaty and what actions by beings on this planet will be in breach of the treaty and or against universal law? The full details to date on the peace treaty have all been covered in all of the shows. They're probably more prevalent in the UPU show, which is in the archives on thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org, and maybe in the earlier Kim shows, not the last couple. It was heavily referenced in them as well. Next set of questions. There's 3 of them again, and I'll address them again in the same way. Is I connected with Source a while ago. One listener said, I collected the keys, my life turned around for the good. I feel that I'm under attack to make me doubt what I believe. I know that a timeline shifts, I think almost the same as you do. Now I am at a point where I don't know what to do. Do you have any advice for me? Second, with all the programming that has occurred on mass level, for example through TV, electronics or gaming devices, do we need to be prepared for illness triggers that may activate upon cabal demand more directly when the bullshittery hits the fan? Are the folks sitting around unknowingly like time bombs to create mass illness as a needed distraction? If yes, do you have any details of how we can be prepared and to help? And the third one, I am being tormented again in my sleep by a dark entity. When I woke for the first time, I was aware of it. The second time, I gained clear enough consciousness to confront it. As I was waking, I could perceive it. This person dealt with it and wants to know what is this thing and how to stop it. All these 3 questions all relate to the Shielding document, which is available for you all. I have warned several times to use the Shielding document. It's there for your benefit, and it needs to be part of your daily routine. Certainly every couple of days. You can't put yourself in that amount of danger by ignoring it. And the shielding document, and I did a whole op-ed piece on it roughly 2 months ago, was it? 2 or 3 months ago. You can listen to that show again. It's for your benefit, it's not for mine. And it's your responsibility to go and make use of that document. Some like to do their own shielding. I've given what I consider to be helpful, but you have your own imagination, your own ideas, and see what works for you. But you have to shield up. We're dealing with I think the overriding word on the planet now is desperation. There's an awful lot of desperate people out, not just the people who are struggling for food and in wars and poverty, etc., but the cabal, the top corporations, the clowns. Desperation. And when desperation sets in, panic follows, and they start throwing things around to try and stop you, because it's us that is creating that desperate situation. And by us I mean all of us in the alternative community. They can't handle it. So please use the shielding document. That's what it's there for. Right, we're going to have a musical break, and then we're going to go into some very lengthy and interesting intel, which will come in 2 sections tonight. Given it's November, and we'll be covering California shortly, perhaps this song is indicative. Hi all, and welcome back. A little November rain. I hope it's a little enough to put the fires out in California. My favourite guitar solo piece, that. I was asking the MeWe chat people to get their guitars out and let's all be slashed for a few minutes. Another, before I get into the intel, it's relating to the piece I did just before the music on the black people and reparations and the slavery issue. And this is not just a common theme for black people. It happens with the Jewish people. It happens with the Native American people, and it happens with the Hispanic people. And it also happens, funny enough, to the white people. And if the black people, I'll use them as an example, are going to think all white men are the boogeymen, then you're going to have a problem. If the white people, and I'll mention Americans here, because it's largely an American white problem, are going to blame boogeymen from the rest of the world and ignore the problems on our own soil, you're going to continue with the same problem. If the Native American people blame the British Pilgrims and ignore the fact that there was Dutch, French, Portuguese, Spanish and German and Germanic tribes involved in that genocide also, you're going to have a big problem. Same applies to the Hispanics and the genocide that took place there. French, British, Spanish, all took place in the genocide there, and the Dutch. If you're going to continue to blame the people of those current nationalities for what took place 200, 300 years ago, you're going to continue to have a problem. If the Jewish people are going to continue to blame the Germans for what happened in the camps and during World War II, you're going to continue with the same problem. Same as the Russian people, who were genocided more than anybody. They're going to continue to blame the Khazarian Jews. You're going to have a problem. And the only way we eliminate that problem is forget nationalities, forget colours, forget religions, or what country you're from, and realise we're dealing with a political ideology from a bunch of psychopaths who recognise no country, no people, no colour, nothing. That is how we have to train our brain to think different. What went on in the past is horrific, but there's just as much horrifying events ongoing currently that needs our focus than reparations for the past, or slavery issues from the past, or genocides from the past. We've got all the same issues now, here and now. Americans are fond of blaming boogeymen. Russians, Muslims, they're all coming to get us. Except they never did they? The ones on our own soil is what came to get us. And we have to recognise that, and quickly. Intel. First item. There's probably about a dozen today, and then a few more later on. A version of the US military landed in Haiti at the weekend. Not, and I'll repeat, not to protect Haitians, restore order, or give back the billions stolen by the Clinton Foundation. No, they were sent there at the request of Hillary Clinton, under the guise of protecting American interests. Mercenaries again. There are Marines on Haitian soil, all at the request of Hillary. Now, Hillary has no interest in Americans whatsoever, unless she's skinning the children or taking money off them. She's not interested in Americans. Did you know Hillary is a Dragon member? Not the Black Dragon member, which is stationed in America and also in China. Oh no. Hillary Clinton is a Blue Dragon member, which is the UK. aka Rothschilds. You know, if Hillary was that interested in Americans, why didn't she order troops to go and help the California people? Which is, after all, as mentioned in a news item, is a so-called blue state. Whatever bollocks that means. No. And yet we have portal people describing riots in Haiti. It's not riots at all. The people who are fully aware of what's really going on. Make no mistake, the Haitian people know what went on with the Clinton Foundation et al. They know fully. And they are fighting back against these US mercenaries and the Marines to protect their country and the resources of which these mercenaries are trying to steal. Now, all of the operations out there currently in Haiti is being orchestrated by another family member of Hillary, her brother Tony Rodham. This is what's going on, folks. Is it any wonder that Clinton's kids are plain at best and stupid? Hillary is a Rothschild. Bill is a Rockefeller. A marriage of convenience. Personally, I can't think of a worse combination for marriage or children. Sick families, sick bloodlines. But the American people have to stand up, all of you, and remind your sons and daughters in the military who they are really working for. It's not the American people. It never was. Time for militia people to stand up. For those of you close to military bases, hand out flyers and let the soldiers know that it's time to protect Americans, not dragon groups that are dotted all over the world, or Rothschildians. That's what's going on in Haiti. Item 2. Chinese elders, and also connected to some alleged Chinese royals, spoke to us this weekend and wanted Kim to fly to China for a meeting to make a deal. Now, this is a common theme for Kim. People ask her to travel to other places whereby they can kidnap her. That's their plan. And there have been several attempts to do this, both direct and also indirect. But she and we are not that stupid. Sorry. And Kim told them right now she does not believe they want to do good things, and requested them to release the Pentagon from their contract by 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time last Sunday. Now, the contract Kim is referring to for the benefit of the new members is the Pentagon did a deal to sell all of America's military equipment and hardware to a Chinese group, all on behalf of the Black Dragons who are stationed in both countries, and the US military are currently leasing it back from them. Yes, all our planes, ships, tanks, missiles and weaponry belong to this Chinese group. Now, I must stress, it is not the Chinese government. Period. Kim then stated she will release intel on everything they are doing to every intelligence agency worldwide, plus all the central banks, including a complete copy of the contract to the Department of Treasury, and also hand-delivered to Mr. Trump directly should they not release the military hardware contract. And a further tip for new members and listeners is when you hear of issues in mainstream media between America and China, like tariffs and other issues, it is largely to do with the dragon group's issues imposed on each country and very little to do with both countries or their respective governments. It's an important piece to understand. The transatlantic agreement and the trans-Pacific deals were nothing to do with countries and only about dragon groups and off-world trade siphoning the relevant countries out. That's why they got cancelled. So the deadline was set as 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday. Next item. Following their failure to meet the deadline, which we both suspected they wouldn't, Kim then prepared and sent out a 2,779-page intel report with a 2-page summary, and it was sent to all countries' intelligence agencies and the military worldwide, with a special edition sent directly to President Donald Trump. And in case you people with badges forget, he is the Commander-in-Chief. The central banks were then also sent copies to see how they can all then see how things really work, and these Chinese elders, and how their transactions always lead to no pay on the contracts they negotiate, or fail to provide the proof of funds to pay out in the future. All of that has now been sent to the central banks, every military and every country's intelligence agency, with a special edition sent to Donald Trump. Next item. More of a statement than an intel. All major government, military and agency departments are now in total shock, panic, indecision, and are running around going, what the F do we do now, is the order of the day. A case of should we stick or twist. A message to them. That decision will be made for you soon, whether you like it or you don't. You will all be judged by the public in the near future of which decisions you all made. I hope you all make the right one. Next item. Following on from Trump, Mr. Trump being blocked from releasing the disaster funds from the Manor Holding Trust via the Treasury last week. We have had 2 separate cases in the past week, plus the Haiti decision, where Hillary told the military to go to Haiti, not the president, whereby 2 separate judges have decided to overrule the president of this country and tell him what he can and what he can't do. Now, the first judge bans and overturns the ruling on the Clinton News Network agent Jim Acosta's press pass, and then another paid judge, they always are in the current system, decides to block Trump from banning immigrants seeking asylum. Number 1, these people are not immigrants. Number 2, they are mercenaries and another system-paid group. You know, with all the military power and the agencies, of which we've got far too many in this country, drones, fancy technology here and there, planes, you name it. Why haven't the American military stopped the caravan? Why are they letting it get to the border? If they're a threat to this country, why haven't they been dealt with? Something to ponder. They're not being dealt with because they're part of the system. All of them, for new listeners, those migrants have been paid between $1,500 to $2,500 to travel on that caravan. But given the 2 Hillary telling the military where to go, and the 2 judges overruling Trump, and the Citadel agents telling the Treasury and Mr. Trump they don't care what orders he puts out. They override it. Just who is running this country? It's clearly not Mr. Trump, is it? And this is what all Americans need to start grasping, and quickly. Whether you like Trump or not is completely irrelevant with what we're facing currently. The whole country is being hijacked on so many levels, be it the financial assassination program, which has been ongoing for the past 18 months, false flags, deliberately destroying American people's homes, businesses and infrastructure via fake storms or engineered fires. I can tell you here and now, Mr. Trump is doing the best he can in very trying circumstances, with war hawk factions piping in his ear, threatening this, that and the other. Treasonous scumbags within the military, the agencies and the government, backed by an equally treasonous media. This country is under full-scale attack, while the majority of people sleep or argue about who's more important than the other, or argue about party politics, or when's the funds arriving for the RV. Our country is under heavy attack, and most people are oblivious to it. Now, if you want to get the gist of what's really playing out now, minus the nuclear bombs in the show, go and watch the series Jericho. It's on Netflix. That series was done in 2006 and 2008. 10 and 12 years ago. It has all the ingredients: a mercenary military acting as your real military, a fake government masked as a corporation, and even mentions in the series, the second season, the group Citadel, who we mentioned last week in the Intel. It's all in your face. And unless actions are taken soon, the incidents and life in the town of Jericho will be replicated all over this country and also Canada. People with the badges in the military, in the agencies, the Pentagon, and in the government really have to decide it's either America or the clowns. You best choose the right one. Next item. The Federal Reserve rocked up to the Treasury this week, and the government as well, to try and force both of them to declare America, the country, bankrupt. This is the third or fourth time they have tried to do this in the past century. All other attempts and threats worked. This one won't. The reasons they won't will be later in the show. But the Federal Reserve tried to get the Treasury and the government to declare America totally bankrupt this week. Next item. Pope Francis, Benjamin Netanyahu, and also the bank of JP Morgan. Oh my, what a trio. Except all three have in the past week requested to call Kim and work with us. Oops. Like I said many months back in the show, all of them will have to come to us one day. And I mean all of them. We'll see whether this is a genuine attempt to correct things, or another one of their let's play games and delay tactics again, like the so-called Chinese elder stroke royals at the weekend. I hope it's the former. Next item. A word of warning about the internet. No, I'm not going to go on about the alternative media people this time. This is worse. Now, many of you have heard of YouTube's, some blogs and some sites going down. But what we have found out is far worse than put out currently. The clowns are decimating the internet currently with articles, whether from blogs, websites or news media, that doesn't fit into their narrative. All of it, it's all being removed from the internet. Wikipedia or other similar sites are disappearing, not only whole pages and whole sections, but on Wikipedia they're also altering documents and narratives on the internet to suit their agenda. They are changing the history again. A search for historical documents and past history are now starting to disappear at an increasing pace. Kim referenced the group ANNA, which is an acronym, ANNA, to do with the birth certificates, and said there was a good article that she read in the past month. I'll pull it up for you. Doesn't exist anymore. Gone. You know, there's times when we're going through certain documents and relating to certain government departments or certain deals, and sometimes you can pull up dates that are relevant to the documents required. And every time we search, gone. They're now trying to make out income tax was a brief thing in 1861. Well, it was. But the real cattle program, where they put all American people and the descendants up as collateral in 1933-34, those documents have disappeared. Search engines are bringing up next to nothing that we in the alternative community would like to search for. It's all being stripped away. So if you have sites or articles and links that you've saved and wish to keep those details, you will have to copy and paste onto a separate file onto a hard drive, as the links and the articles relevant to the alternative media are now being deleted rapidly. You'll find out for yourself once you look. You'll be searching for general things. Even if you do a basic search with a basic terminology, you know, you would expect 3 or 4 years ago you would have got the result that you wanted. Now you're getting complete and utter drivel that bears no relevance or resemblance to what you just searched for. It's a big problem. And they think they will get away with that. They won't. We have recorded history coming out of our ears. Much to their chagrin. And you'll hear more about recorded history in a later piece. Now, the big story in America this week has been to do with the fires. Many of you will have seen the pictures and the videos. None of it makes any sense. It's not designed to. And someone, one of the members, Janet, collected some things for me, and I said I will put it in a piece, some of which is already written, and added these pieces in. So these next two pieces, which will take us into a music break, are all about California and the fire, and pondering pieces. So the first thing is to get people to understand is weather management using space-based power systems was filed in December 2010 by a company called Solarum. Now, to give you a brief background, the Chinese were interfering with the weather 300 or 400 years ago. It's not a new technology. All technology is the past, and I mean all. None of it is the future. Now, the description of it is a space-based power system and a method of altering weather using space-borne energy. Now, the space-based power system maintains proper position and alignment of system components without using connecting structures. In other words, it's in a geostationary orbit, so it's not connected to the ground. Power system elements are launched into orbit, and the free floating power system elements are maintained in proper system alignment, in other words, in geostationary orbit. Energy from the space-based element is applied to a weather system such as a hurricane, and the later weather element to weaken or dissipate the weather element. So they do have the ability to wipe a hurricane out. Now, the weather element can be altered by changing the temperature of a section of it, which can also change the airflows and the direction of the storm. I can hear a lot of you going, Yes, indeed. In 2011, the same people in an email stated that they are the first to propose solar generator based in space that beam down RF waves to a receptor site and convert it into DC current. Now, initially the receptor site was the Mojave Desert, but it was moved to Sebastopol, which is located in the wine region of Sonoma County, California. Seeing the picture now? You'll see more. Which is exactly the same area where two consecutive ridges of low pressure was located in the past 2 weeks. What are the chances? In the next week, starting Saturday, a low pressure will sit in the same place for a number of days. It will move to the east, and another low pressure, this is 4 on the trot now, will situate itself directly opposite Sebastopol. Nature doesn't work that way. In 2016, PG&E announced their decision to purchase 200 megawatts of energy from a space-based platform, and that company is Solarum. PG&E is ran by the Rothschilds. Go figure. The Rothschilds are also the owners of many wine fields dotted around California. Conveniently, none of theirs have burned in any fire. but quite a few other wineries burned in earlier fires. Isn't it funny how life throws up these little quirks and how easily people brush over them as a coincidence? Well, actually, it's not funny, given hundreds of people have died, tens of thousands have lost their homes and businesses, and there are over 1,000 people missing. It's just not funny. Previous fires burned many of the new start-up business pot fields, marijuana, putting those new businesses out of business. In comes Monsanto / Bayer, and Bayer is a Rothschild name also, as is Bauer. And apparently they're going to take over the whole of the North American marijuana industry. Hence the reason for supplies issues that are running at record lows in Canada currently. They're setting it up. They're stalling the current businesses for takeover, and they'll run the whole industry. I did tell you all the pot legalisation thing was another cabal-oriented plan, which too many, yet again, have fallen for it. We need to get wise to it. The pattern always repeats. So because their programs to eliminate people failed, it is clear now they have a new way of disrupting things. Weather wars. They are able to create high and low ridges of pressure, and this method steers it. Now, like I said, California had a low stationed just north of San Francisco off the coast that moved out, and another one went exactly the same position, stuck there a few days and moved east. But that's all a coincidence, right? The outcome of those two low ridges of pressure, it created by complete accident, according to the portal people, more wind and less rain. All whilst the portal people named fires raged. Same time. But it's just a coincidence, isn't it? But here's where I have a problem. Because I apply common sense, some logical thinking, and something oblivious to too many people these days, critical thinking. Many of you will have seen the pictures and the videos across the internet. But I struggle to see how an ordinary brush fire, their words, not mine, incinerates brick or breeze block to complete dust. Or how fires that have the ability in Santa Ana winds that were gusting between 30 and 70 miles an hour, their words, not mine, they being the portal people. So we have a raging fires being blown by gale force winds, and yet fires can burn in an open field in a complete straight line. And then can go on and carve through a house, in windy conditions, mind, and completely cut that house in half, with no evidence of burning on the part of the house left standing, no fire marks on the roof shingles, nothing. But don't mind me, I'm just a conspiracy theorist, or so they say. Let's look again at some of more of their evidence. Not my evidence, theirs. Ordinary house bricks, they say, will decompose at 1200 degrees Fahrenheit. Fine. The temperatures for making and firing bricks in a kiln is 900 to 1200 Fahrenheit. So if you fire bricks in a kiln at 1200 Fahrenheit, how can they decompose at the same temperature? So those two figures don't make any sense for the start. But let's ignore those silly little discrepancies, shall we? The next figures. Grass burns at 518 degrees Fahrenheit. Trees burn at 572 degrees Fahrenheit. Both were bone dry because of the prevailing conditions. So if they didn't go on fire, which neither did for most of it, the grass and the trees, it means the temperatures in the fire didn't reach 518 Fahrenheit, would it not? The next figures given to us is the wildfires were burning at 1472 Fahrenheit, which would account for the brick issue temperature disintegration. But please explain how 1472 Fahrenheit does not burn grass at 518 Fahrenheit or trees at 572 Fahrenheit burning point. Given we have seen the evidence of melted car windscreens, which require temperatures of around 1400 and 1800, and yet it's not enough to burn grass and trees, which require the least temperatures to burn. Does this really make any sense whatsoever? Car windscreens melt at 2400 Fahrenheit. So how does a 1472 Fahrenheit fire melt glass? How does a 1472 Fahrenheit not burn grass, which burns at 518, or trees at 572? This is what's going on, folks. Here is a song that explains straight line fires that burn at odd temperatures. It's called Fire Dance. And the second song reflects this town that was razed to the ground, literally, but lies conveniently on top of a gold strata. That place is paradise, which just happens to be alongside where the ridge of low pressure was, and almost in geographic alignment to Sebastopol, where the Rothschilds PG&E and solar-based Technip is based. That was GHI's effort to highlight Paradise, the town. That was Paradise City. Take me down to Paradise City. Well, they took it down all right. 26,000 people have lost everything. There's no homes left in Paradise. 26,000 people. Take me down to the Paradise City where the grass is green. Strange grass in paradise that doesn't burn in fires 3 times its burning point. We will fight back, and we are fighting back, but not all shows has good news. For most of this year, we've taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back, which is still 1 step forward. For the past month, we've traded blows of 1 forward and 1 back, but we've still not lost those gains for the previous 9 or 10 months. Eventually they'll run out of 1 step back. Eventually they'll run out of blocks on the funds. And we're ready to step in. Maybe the final 2 pieces will cheer you up a bit. But we've got more things that I need to cover. And given what I mentioned about the deleting of history, which must be documented, this is another piece, and in essence it covers some of the things that I said from the From Russia with Love series, and also how the Jewish people were being used again. Some will see this as an attack on the Jewish people, but I'll refer you to what I mentioned in the first hour. You're not seeing the bigger picture. You're being blinded by the divide and conquer program. Listen closely. This is what happened to your people. Now, it's taken from a book, Ben Gurion's Scandals, How the Haganah and the Mossad Eliminated Jews. This was written in 2003 by Naim Giladi. And it states as follows: Stalin's decision to use the Zionists in establishing the State of Israel after the Second World War was motivated primarily by his intent to oppose the United States in the oil-rich Middle East. And the temporary Soviet support for the Zionists materialized in the form of allowing 711,000 Jews to exit from countries behind the Iron Curtain in 1945 to 1947, supposedly in order to emigrate to Palestine. Now remember, it was the Zionists, the Khazarian Jews, who overthrew Russia under the fake Bolshevik revolution, which his story tells you was done by the Russian people. No, it wasn't. It was done by these Zionists, who have no interest in Russians, white people, or even their own people, as you'll find out with this. That's what people really need to understand. The Zionists advertised this migration under the code name Bria, B-R-I-H-A, escape of Jews from Europe. In reality, the vast majority of Jews preferred to go to the United States or stay in France. Of the 711,000 Jewish refugees, panicked by some 15 pogroms staged by the NKVD in the 1945 through 1947, with some Zionist assistance, only 232,000 actually went to Palestine. Only the pogrom of Kielce on the 4th of July 1946 was described in the world press, which was only mentioned in the Soviet version, which is ran by the Khazarian Jews. 15 other pogroms in the satellite states, 4 of them in Budapest alone, Hungary, never reported in the world media, or were reported in such a way that they did not survive in public memory. The Zionists organised the groups of Jewish refugees who left Poland, mainly through the cities of Szczecin and Klodzok. Interesting names. I hope I pronounced them correctly. You get the gist anyway. The Soviet terror apparatus in Kielce conducted show trials of 9 Poles who, under torture, signed confessions and were immediately executed. Later, their families provided evidence that none of the executed men were present in Kielce on the 4th of July 1946, and the Bishop of Kielce, Mr. Kazimarek, was tortured for 40 hours and lost 19 teeth before Jewish security officers were able to extract from him an incriminating statement. They acted under the supervision of Colonel Joseph Goldberg, who was the director of the Ministry of National Security, MBP, who wrote a threatening note to Bishop Kaczmarek. "I have smashed the faces of lawyers, and I warn you, Bishop, not to ever seek legal help." So they were being threatened. The Soviet terror apparatus organised the departure for Palestine of Jewish war veterans and provided them with weapons manufactured in Czechoslovakia. In March 1947, the Soviet Union, represented by Andrei Gromyko, was the first member state of the United Nations to demand the partition of Palestine and a creation, therefore, of the State of Israel as a new member of the UN. Now, the UN authorised the partition of Palestine in November 1947, and on May the 14th, 1948, the State of Israel was founded. In exchange for helping to bring the United States into the First World War, the British proclaimed Palestine, the British owned it, as a Jewish homeland. And this was done in a letter on November the 2nd, 1917, written by the Foreign Secretary then, Arthur Balfour, and people will know the Balfour Declaration. And this letter was to Chief Zionist in Great Britain, Walter Rothschild. That name again. So when you consider who really took over Russia during the so-called Bolshevik Revolution, that had nothing to do with Russians and everything to do with the Khazarian political ideology, that is an important point. Forget Jews. It's a Khazarian political ideology, Zionism. It has zero to do with Jews or their religion, even though the latter is fairly insidious to humanity, as we pointed out in an earlier show, but you begin to see the picture of what took place. What his story won't tell you is Hitler twice arranged for the safe transportation of the Jewish people. Remember, his mother was a Jew. Once in a meeting with Winston Churchill and Menachem Begin to move them all to Palestine, which is a British colony country. Mr. Begin refused. Said he didn't want his own people. This was in 1942-1943 time. So before any of the now legendary accounts of atrocities, all of which were refuted by official Red Cross documents at the time and other civil rights groups who reported what went on in the camps, and all reported back that they were being looked after well. Clearly some weren't, but there was not the levels that have been reported in history his story since. And also a 50-cent per head deal to return all Jewish peoples to wherever they were required was offered to the Rothschilds, which they also refused to undertake. And again, you see the picture here when you have an open mind. 2 attempts during the war to remove and save the Jewish people from the camps, and both were refused by so-called people of their own ilk. This was a program that was set up 60 to 70 years previous by the powers that be. Like I keep telling you, they're not interested in which country you're from or what nationality you are or what religion you are. They just use all of us. And once people really grasp that, then the divide and conquer program will end. But the question is, why did the world's media from 1888 to 1945 mention the term 6 million Jews over 138 separate occasions in their publications? Why that figure? Why not mention 150,000, which is the exact figure the Red Cross determined the amount of Jewish people in the camps? Why is the Holocaust plaque now being reduced several times from the official figure of 6 million, and if memory serves me correct, it's now down to less than 2 million now? Why? To me, killing one Jewish person is too much. And I'll repeat again, this is not anti-Jewish. This is all about how the control system uses certain peoples and countries for their own agendas. And they care not about any peoples or any country, only how they can leverage in a way for their total gains. But I'd like the Jewish people who base their lifestyle on the Talmud to get off their high horse. You are not the chosen people. You've been played. And quit with the Goyim narratives. As the longer that goes on, the more they will use you as pawns. And something that the Jewish people need to consider, in my opinion. Goyim means shit under a shoe. Well, who do you think will save you? It won't be Yahweh or Jehovah. That's a guarantee. Because if he was saving you, you wouldn't have gone through so much strife for so long to begin with. The reality is it will be the so-called Goyim who will partake in saving you. It's time you embrace them, and time for us all to embrace each other, methinks. This divide and conquer has gone on for far too long. They've played us all. A couple of things now. I should have done this after the California piece. But some people in our group are fighting back. I don't agree with their political choices, but that's but at least they're having a go at doing something, you know. And so kudos to Cheryl Bracewell and the people in Humboldt County, where most of the people of that group lives, but also in neighbouring counties that have been joining in too, especially in Trinity County, and they also have a few people from the counties of Del Norte, Mendocino, Sonoma and Shasta County so far. And some of their achievements this year is they've identified thousands of Democratic conservatives, developed a conservative communications network, learned key stuff about our liberal enemies, and learned from mistakes we had made, engaged hundreds of people to fight for changes, and started and maintaining ongoing discussions of solutions, and also keeping people riled up about our situation. Nice to hear. Keep going. I would still think it's better, it's not a criticism, where the people between you select a candidate. Not Democratic, not Republican, not Liberal, Conservative, left and right and all that nonsense. That's all divide and conquer. Pick someone out of your group and get the people of California to support it. Then we have our choice in the White House, or in the Congress, or in the Senate, or the House, not their choices. Next item to ponder on: branding people via birth certificates. Kim mentioned about how they assess each person's life tax earnings and base their value on you from there on in. So, say they assess you to pay $2 million in taxes, all taxes, not just income tax, over the entirety of your working life. They believe you will only be at a base lower level of earning over your entire working life, compared to someone they assess that will pay, for argument's sake, $10 million in taxes over a working lifetime. But the questions that arise from this is, are they then, if you are assessed in lower taxes, confining you to jobs in minimum or low wage pay sectors only? Think about that. You ever wondered why only certain people get the higher paid jobs? And even when you are qualified, get overlooked for certain positions? Could it be your stock value they assess and attribute it to your tax earnings via the birth certificate and the cattle number known as Social Security or National Insurance in Europe determines which jobs you can have and which jobs you can't? Think about that. Well, I personally know some people are deliberately blacklisted from certain jobs, or in some cases any jobs, as they blackball you via the Social Security or National Insurance number. This has gone on a long time. The key question is to find out for us all in the future is just how much of your life has been dictated by hidden forces and rules whereby we're confined to be a lower earning person by some exclusive committee none of us knew existed. Something to ponder, and ponder deep. The only way around that system is to work for yourself. But then you dictate how much you earn, depending on the jobs being available, not them. Next item. I had an interesting conversation with a friend, long-time friend, this past week, who has reappeared, having gone through a rough period in his life, and hopefully from my perspective continues some of the positive work he was doing back in 2014 with the programme members, and chime in occasionally when time allows of how he feels life in this world is going. And that person was Shane the Runer. And the reason I bring it up is he said something on the call that highly resonates with me, and it's something I thought I would get across to the listeners in this show. When we were discussing the SS small p, secret space program, for those who don't know, and I mentioned that they are a Nazi breakaway group, and he said yes, but have you not considered that we the people are the real breakaway group? And after a quick ponder, I agreed with his notion. In essence, we are exactly what he stated. And this also ties into what I stated back in 2016 about the two worlds overlaying each other and how it works. We are the breakaway group. And the reason why is we have taken steps, all of us, everyone who listens to this show and the people in the alternative community, we've all taken steps away from them and stepped out of their world and have started to create a new world, one which is in our image, not theirs. We no longer accept their lies, their wars, divide and conquer, although that program will take some time to correct fully. No longer tolerate their political shenanigans, their methods of health, education, legalities, criminality and downright psychopathic behaviours, and we're all working towards correcting that in our own way, where we can create a new breakaway world where politicians are formed by the people, teachers who will actually teach something of value and not teach children to pass a test, health workers who heal and cure, not manage conditions, leaders who guide and teach to advance the all, not rule over people with an authoritative iron fist of my way or the highway, and nations coming together and working side by side. Law people enforcing the law, not legal babble bullshittery. So thanks to Shane for that idea, and I hope you all see it that way. We are the breakaway society, all of us in the alternative community. Next item, something to ponder on again. People have focused on chemtrails a long time, and I mentioned back in 2014 it didn't make any sense. We all breathe the same air. The only thing that did make sense if it was an ET off-world program, which actually it was. And now it makes less sense as their interference is now limited or completely gone in most aspects. Plus, humans in general now have become immune to chemtrails, much to their chagrin. And could it be the same applies to the recent furore over the internet? I'm not discounting it by any means. I'm asking people to think over 5G. Again, it doesn't make sense when we all take in the frequencies. And like I said, I'm not saying 5G or chemtrails are good by any means, but perhaps it's not as devastating as some are making out. We all know the alternative community loves the fear porn. So I got pondering again. Now, could it well be being orchestrated, the 5G, by an underground group to get rid of the surface population as well. Think SS small p. And something I hope to get greater knowledge on in the coming weeks and months and year. But it's something that needs to be pondered on. And rest assured, if it is to do with the SSP, the peace treaty will be enforced on those elements taking part. Some people have asked why, like the Californian fire incident, why the council or the UPU won't intervene. Largely because it's a human versus human issue. You will not intervene with that. They expect us to fight back. Now, there's a kind of overreach of the previous failed model ran by Marduk that still perpetrates today. And so an address has been made based on that angle, because it's not just a human to human. We're dealing with people who had access to technology and control systems that largely the world has no idea. And I think some help should be provided. We'll see what the answers come back, but largely anything that's human to human issue, which is most of the world's ills now, if not all, because the others are not interfering anymore, it's something we have to fix. But the argument is they still have their control systems that were run by off-world entities, which means that is still against the peace treaty in my reckoning. Next piece. Someone wrote in, many have wrote in this week, a lot of emails, but perhaps something else. People liked the business, the People's Club business model that I put out last week, and one member said she'd like to add a suggestion to the People's Club new business model. Every company should have a small classroom for mentorship and apprenticeship studies, even if it is an hour a day or a home study program that each employee can elect or choose as a way to improve themselves. She went on, good business models follow natural law and employees should understand this. There are books on this, and a good company organisational chart template follows natural law. There are divisions, some are more important than others for company survival, and there's quality control, and there are learning manuals for each job description, and even an ethics department in which employees are sent if they screw up and given a chance to mend their ways. Each employee is considered valuable. Each employee is encouraged to improve their knowledge. So that's something I feel, yes, it's a good idea, and maybe something we can roll into the People's Club businesses. Maybe they can listen to some of these shows and find out some real knowledge. But we have to start getting people being creative again, in whatever format that may be. And the entrepreneurial that's largely been crushed in this country and in Europe, where people feel they don't have any value with their ideas of how to improve products or the way products are built or whatever. Just gets ignored. Follow the orders. I am the manager, you'll listen to me. That's not the way to go. So thank you for that idea. Well, this is another part of a question, which is more of a statement, really, and I've no idea whether this is who this person is, but it's kind of indicative of the naivety of the way some people think. They're not thinking properly. So I'll read it out and then I'll pass comment. And it was addressed to me and Kim. Do you want to get humanity to care about a better world collectively? Eliminate their worries by reversing the programming system. Good idea. You say the Manor World Holding Trust has $1.8 trillion for the people. Assuming the 1.8 trillion portion is just for America, release it. Why are you not releasing it? Make an immediate executive order proposal to our POTUS for a 50% luxury tax. There are approximately 325 million people in America. Distribute $5,000 to every individual over 21. The under 21s can withdraw at 21. And then you will see more people will join together for a better life. Worry clouds judgment. For most people, if one cannot provide for themselves or their children, they can't think collectively for the all. No brainer. Personally, I feel that $250,000 per person would show phenomenal results. Oh my. One, we've already tried releasing it. We covered that in the Intel, and we were blocked. Two, we had an executive approval, not proposal, approval from Donald Trump and Citadel and their third-party company Vice, or Visa, which is the same people from Citadel, marched into the Treasury and frog marched our ambassador out and said they don't care what the Treasury think or what Donald Trump says or what order. That's what's going on. As for giving everyone $5,000, that's not going to work too well. People may actually get more. I don't see what giving $5,000 to every person is suddenly going to get them to join up for a better life. Why do you need $5,000 to improve your own life? Why do you have to be bought? That's essentially what you're asking for. That the trust should buy people out and give them money to get them to fight for a better life. That type of thinking is just so wrong. Buying people off to improve people's lives? Seriously? Isn't that just what the cabal have done to the sellout agents in the alt media? To the government people, to the military people, to the people in the Pentagon, bought them off. And you are asking the trust to repeat that behaviour. Sorry, but just not. We think different. Repeating the same patterns will lead to the same failure. But when the team and the people who are interested in the American people work around the clowns who are not, the funds will get released. Please don't be telling us that we have to buy people off for them to step up and join together for a better life. That thinking is way off. Another question. Is there any truth to the reporting of Chinese troops and tanks in Mexico and Russia, making a deal with the new leftist president of Mexico to manufacture dangerous military equipment there and give Mexico 10% of that military equipment. Also, weather war types of alt media reported for months now about Russian and Chinese warships off the northeast coast of South America and various islands. Reports of Bolton and Pence meeting with Putin about Trump being soon to have a military takeover of America, and many troops deploying in emergency type fashion to Reese Air Force Base in North Texas, along with US Armory to our borders. How much is true and what can we do? The Reese Air Force, North Texas, was like a flashback in time. 4-year loop news. Remember Jade Helm? It was all happening then, wasn't it? The Chinese and Russian troops that are on the border in Mexico and Canada was also 4-year loop news. That they were coming to get us in 2014. There was also, at the time, dotted around the alt media of Muslim enclave camps all over America. Now, consider this. We have all kinds of satellites dotted around everywhere. Cameras here, cameras there. Do you think for 1 second that one of the agencies wouldn't have noticed a load of Russian and Chinese troops stationed on both borders? And do you think they would have chose to ignore that? Think about it. They've been sitting there for months. In fact, the Russian and Chinese on the Canadian border and Mexican border have been sitting there for 4 years. And none of the American military or the intelligence agencies did anything about it. Just let them sit there with tanks and all kinds of weaponry. This is the same military and country that invaded 81 countries since the Second World War. Do you think they're really going to ignore a threat of that magnitude on both borders if it was real? It's not. And they're spitting out 4-year loop news again. All of these reports, and all apart from the Bolton and Pence meeting, which people have twisted based on their own opinions, of which they know zero of what's going on. All these same themes were put out in 2014. Russian and Chinese troops, Mexican and Canadian border. Jade Helm style deployments in emergency fashions. It was all over YouTubes and other alt media then. They're doing it again. Why? Because they want to put you in fear. That's the primary reason. The second reason is they want to gauge how many people don't fall for it, to see if they've made any progress or lost any ground. You're going to get a lot of this type of stuff. Loop news, I call it. It's a 4-year loop. Everything that happened in 14 is being relayed in 2018 like it's happening now. Except it's not. Didn't happen then, and it's not happening now. And it's something that people have to get a grasp on. Here's another 4-year loop narrative. Drake kept quiet for long enough, but he's made statements in his recent show And I'm sorry, but Drake has completely lost his way. And that show he's doing with Kent Dunn ended any credibility he had left. Zero. Drake has stated this week that Marduk was back and he was seeking him out personally and he will take him out. Oh dear, Drake. Sorry, you might get away with that with some elements in Cosmic Voice, who are still stuck in the 2013-14 time loop narrative. Or the quantum shift, or is it quantum shit? But not in this group, Drake. I'm sorry. The very fact you are sharing a show with a channeler is in and of itself a 180 from the Drake we all knew when I left Cosmic Voice. I didn't leave, I was booted. Sorry, Drake, but you're becoming an embarrassment now, which I personally find sad. Despite him selling me out to the Wilcock-Keenian mafia group. Now what is happening is, in the Quantum Shift show, Drake is reading out old logs out of the now disbanded ET group, which ran in the background of the Cosmic Voice group between 2013 and 2014, when certain missions were carried out by people within that group. I can confirm, yes, Marduk was in Africa for the fake Mandela funeral in November or December 2014 time. Mandela had died the previous June. Oops. And the reason Marduk was there for the fake public funeral was, which was another one of the ritual style ceremonies, you know what takes place in the ritual ceremonies, is Marduk, who was being guarded by American troops there, but because Nelson Mandela was a former trustee of the trust. Oops. So he's not a good guy. I'm sorry. And that's why Marduk was there. He's not there now. Marduk was Anunnaki and part of the Draco group within the Anunnaki 5 species circle. He was operating in a human-looking vessel here, and he was the nephew of Anu, who is better known in the Bible as the Lord. Again, oops. And as for Marduk, he was permanently removed by us in November 2016 after our request to the council was approved for his permanent removal. Sorry, Drake. Dearly me. Final 2 pieces. And both of them are intel. I said earlier I would mention further history. And this piece will start with a history. You might want to pin your earlugs back and listen to this. Did you know the IRS, Inland Internal Revenue Service, was not approved by an act of Congress? This means that income taxes are not enforceable. But before everyone rushes off and stops paying tax, please hold fire on that action whilst the current system is still in place, is worked out and also corrected. We don't need people going to jail. Now, the only act of Congress approved for taxes was for the Tax and Revenue Service, which is still in place in some states, not the Internal Revenue Service. And it is the Tax and Revenue Service which has the real authority. But that has remained a dormant government department since the 1930s, as I understand, due to much messing with articles on the internet mentioned earlier, and cross-checking that information has now become a needle in a haystack, because they're deleting all kinds of files. So what we, the Trust, are working on now is a complete dismantling of the current IRS, which does not require congressional oversight or approval, and a transition over to the official government name and department called the Tax and Revenue Services. Once that transition is completed, the IRS has no authority or legitimacy to collect taxes. I repeat, once that transition is completed. That will end the IRS as we know it, permanently. The new department, Tax and Revenue Service, will be staffed with new people and will not include any high-profile or positions people within the current IRS structure. Following that transition, 3 now separate departments will be merged into one, which will cut costs and also resolve cross-connected issues. The 3 are the Criminal Investigation Unit, the Treasury Investigation Unit, and also the IRS Investigation Unit. Well, maybe the latter will be the one who gets more investigated than anyone else outside. Anyway, these 3 departments will streamline into one, which is the main effect of it. Once the Tax and Revenue Service is up and running, the transition will not require much in a way that will have any impact for the average person. But we are working on a deal with the new department to eliminate income tax completely for all Americans and introduce a spending tax of 10%. That will end sales tax also and income tax. We are also working on a Social Security pension fund structure. All of what you pay into that fund currently was going to the IRS and then being transferred to a Swiss Rothschild's bank until Kim and the Trust stepped in. When the IRS sent the Rothschilds $780 billion this year, she confiscated it all and put it all back into the Trust. All that money will now be going to the American government and subsequently to the American people, where we will not be borrowing money from the Federal Reserve. As an idea which will be put forward initially to the Trust, and should the Trust approve it, maybe people should consider a portion of your income tax that you're now not paying, which then would be a volunteer-only program, I want to make that clear, which then could be paid to the Trust or a government department, depending on which is selected, into an extra pension fund that you know will be protected and not run the risk of it being stolen or misused by some so-called broker, which to me equals snake oil salesman or some Wall Street jackass. So instead of paying, for argument's sake, you might pay $100 in income tax on your wages per week or whatever. You could decide to keep the $100 because you're not paying any income tax, or maybe put $50 towards a pension fund in the Trust or a government department, depending on which way it's selected. And then you're going to have a safe pension fund. on top of the current. Something that may be considered. Just an idea. But everyone will have more money in their pocket regardless. But maybe some of it should be saved. That was the idea I've put forward this week to Kim, and if she approves it and pushes it on, we'll see how it goes. Final item. The Trust contacted the Chinese Treasury this week. Not Chinese elders, or Chinese dragons, or Rothschilds and all that bollocks. The actual Chinese Treasury, to negotiate a deal with them directly with regards to the debt America owes China, the country, not the elders or the dragon groups. As of Tuesday morning, the $1.476 trillion debt owed by America to China was settled in full by the Trust to the People's Bank of China. 1.476 trillion. In return, the Chinese Treasury returned all of the Treasury debt bond notes to signify the debt has been paid in full. So America is now free of all Chinese debt. No more interest payments for years on end, siphoning money out of the country, all paid off by the Trust. Following that deal, and fittingly, not a surprise, like a kid running for the ice cream van that's just left, the Federal Reserve turned up at the Treasury Department asking for their payouts on their debt notes, which totalled $196 trillion. So Kim collected all the debt notes for $196 trillion and paid it all the debt back to the Federal Reserve. But wait just a minute. Kim and the Trust owns all of the Federal Reserve. So Kim decided to chat to herself for a bit as a representative of both the Trust and the Fed, and paid back the $196 trillion to herself, and then returned it all back to the Trust. And zeroed out all the Fed debt on behalf of America. Oh dear. So America now has no debt to China or the Federal Reserve. All of it was wiped out in one quick swoop. Now, following this move by Kim and the team, the Federal Reserve people, who spent all day debating in the Treasury and delaying some of our other work with the Treasury, which was highlighted last week, the Treasury turned round and booted the Federal Reserve people out of the Treasury, and they were told they have no authority to come back there anymore. Oh, happy days indeed. That's the classic, that. Oh, 196 trillion. Do I want that 196 trillion? No. Okay, I'll pay it back. Thank you. That belongs to me anyway. I'm back into the Trust. Lovely. So, the Trump administration now is fully aware, because of our connections and contacts direct with him, that he now has the wherewithal to remove the Federal Reserve from our shores once and for all. I hope he makes it happen, and quickly. With tomorrow being Thanksgiving, I would like to ask you all to give a small Thanksgiving to Kim and the team as well. We've achieved much, so much this year, despite clowns, despite threats and limited resources, and in some cases a complete lack of support. But I want to wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy it, and spare a thought for all those Native Americans who were slaughtered on that day. His story has really told the real truth of what happened in the past. This show strives to correct it. Together we all move forward, and remember, to all those who live on their own at this time, you are never with THI should you ever feel that you walk alone, because you don't. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.
Remember what it says?